So here's a question for you. 20 years ago, PCs were the kings of everything. Fast forward to 2024, and we've got web browsers that can do things we never thought possible. Designing websites, editing videos, even playing games. But does that mean PCs have lost their edge? Not entirely. While web browsers have come a long way, there are still a few things they can't quite handle, as well as those traditional, trusty PCs. One of the biggest things that hasn't changed is the way PCs allow you to interact with hardware. Back in the early 2000s, if you were a PC enthusiast, you could tweak the CPU, mess around with the GPU, and even dive into the BIOS to customize your setup. You had control over just about everything. In 2024, though, web browsers can't do that. They're designed to be secure, operating in a bubble where they don't let you access hardware directly. Sure, browsers today have powerful APIs like WebGL for 3D rendering, but they'll never give you the full hardware control that a traditional PC does. And that's for good reason. Security. Imagine if a browser could mess with your computer's hardware. That'd be a nightmare. But for some people, especially gamers and hardware enthusiasts, that limitation is still a drawback. Speaking of gaming, let's talk about performance. High-end gaming is another area where PCs still blow browsers out of the water. In 2004, playing a game like Half-Life 2 meant you needed a powerful desktop with a solid GPU. In 2024, while we have web technologies like WebGL and WebGPU, which can handle 3D games, web-based gaming doesn't even come close to what a dedicated gaming PC can do. Those AAA titles with ultra-high settings, ray tracing, and VR capabilities, browsers just can't compete. They can run games, sure, but for the kind of performance gamers want, PCs are still the way to go. Web-based games might be fun for casual play, but if you're serious about your gaming, a browser is not going to cut it. Now let's talk about offline functionality. Remember when you didn't need to be connected to the internet to get stuff done? In the early 2000s, everything ran offline. Your games, your productivity software, even your operating system tools. In 2024, web browsers rely heavily on the cloud. Sure, we've got some offline capabilities with things like progressive web apps, but most of what we do in the browser still needs an internet connection. Your Google Docs? Great offline for a bit, but you'll need to sync up eventually. And that's the thing. Web apps are convenient, but when the internet's down, a lot of what you rely on just stops working. On a PC, you've got your data stored locally, your apps ready to go, no connection needed. It's dependable in a way that browsers just aren't. Then there's the ability to customize your system. 20 years ago, if you wanted to mess with your operating system, you could. Install different OSs, play around with system files, dual boot into Linux, you name it. Web browsers don't give you any of that freedom. They're designed to stay in their lane, interacting only with the web and not touching the operating system itself. And that's fine for security, but if you're someone who likes tinkering, customizing, or optimizing your system, you're going to be sticking with a PC. The deep level of control just isn't there in a browser. And what about professionals? In 2024, sure, you can do a lot in a browser. There are web apps for photo editing, video production, and even 3D modeling. But for professionals who need serious power, web apps don't come close to what native PC software can do. Think about video editors working with Final Cut Pro or engineers using AutoCAD. The performance and precision required in those fields just aren't feasible in a browser. Web apps are getting better, but for heavy-duty resource-intensive tasks, PCs still reign supreme. Lastly, let's not forget about data privacy and control. Back in 2004, most of your data was stored locally. You didn't have to worry about where your files were because they were right there on your hard drive. In 2024, we've moved to the cloud for most things, and while that's great for accessibility, it also means you're relying on third-party servers to store and manage your data. Privacy concerns are a lot more relevant now. A PC, on the other hand, still gives you full control over your data. You know where it is, and you don't need an internet connection to access it. That kind of local control is something a browser just can't match, especially in industries where confidentiality and security are key. So, while web browsers in 2024 are incredibly powerful compared to where they were 20 years ago, there are still some things they can't do, as well as traditional PCs. Whether it's deep hardware control, high-end gaming, or offline reliability, PCs remain essential for certain tasks that web browsers just aren't built for. The technology gap is closing, but for now, the old-school PC still has some tricks up its sleeve.